Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead here, and today I'm going to be giving you some theory. Not theory crafting or theory hammer, but conspiracy theories, I guess, based on Warhammer and the Old World. So, for those of you that don't know, super quick, Warhammer in the Old World was a rank and flank game where you would put all of your little miniatures onto a base, and then you would move that base around, and you could pretend to be like a general as you moved like troops of men around. It was basically historical wargaming. That was where it came from. You know, where you would move like little squads of like men with muskets from like the Napoleonic era or whatever around, except it was all fantasy. And of course you'd roll dice, and you wouldn't be able to pre-measure things, so when you had artillery to fire, you just said, I'm going to shoot at that unit, and then you guessed where you wanted it to land, and then you rolled to see where it actually landed, and if that was in range. It was pretty cool. However, people didn't like it, for some reason, and it wasn't selling well, so GW destroyed it, and they created Age of Sigmar. And Age of Sigmar is a thing. Now, I've got to admit, actually, I don't mind Age of Sigmar. It's super high fantasy, right? Cool. Some people like that. However, two things. One, and I think this is the thing that actually matters for GW, it seems to be that GW, after having moved to Age of Sigmar and trying to push Age of Sigmar as their new thing, their brand, you know, something that is distinctly theirs, as opposed to much, much more Tolkien-esque. And, you know, just straight up rip-offs of D&D, which is where the company came from originally. Nobody likes it. They like it, obviously. They love it. They think they've done an amazing thing. But other game companies, you know, the other media sources don't like it. For example, we see the huge success of Vermintide 2, obviously, and the Warhammer Total War series. I mean, where are the Age of Sigmar games? They're nowhere, because nobody wants to touch that IP. So GW, in their incredibly slow but obviously infinite wisdom, has said, hey, we're leaving money on the table here, let's bring back the Old World so that we can continue to push that as our own IP. Okay, that was my intro. That was a long intro. I was originally going to make this video about, hey, you know what this means with Warhammer the Old World coming back? That means we're going to be getting Mordheim coming back. Isn't that awesome? And I was going to talk about Mordheim and what Mordheim used to be and how it kind of related to Kill Team a bit. But no, because since then GW has brought out this new thing. They've given us a map of the Old World. Now, what does this mean for us? It could be that they are just slowly building the map and we haven't seen the whole map yet. Or it could be that this map actually is everything we are going to get in the Old World. Now we scroll down a bit and we see a nice little video. This video is just a little scrolling GIF, frankly, where 4 different symbols pop up. These 4 symbols are simply just 4 house crests, crests of different houses that existed in the Old World before the game that we used to play in. So remember, for those of you that do remember, we were playing in Warhammer the Old World, the End Times. Basically, all of the humans were one faction. Before that time, obviously, because, you know, that's history, isn't it? All of the factions were separate, and all of the humans would fight each other to see who should actually be the leader. Obviously, the leader ended up being Sigmar, because he's some sort of god champion person. Unless you were Bretonian, then it was the Lady of the Lake. I believe they still kind of accepted the relevancy of Sigmar, but, you know, the Lady of the Lake in it.
Who does he think he is?
I'm your king.
Well, I didn't vote for you.
So, what this means is, firstly, we're not getting Mordheim back in the state that it was, which is a shame. However, I feel, I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel that purely, like, there is nothing to back this up. Let's get this straight. These 4 houses imply something a little bit more akin to, are you ready? Game of Thrones.
There's no cure for being a cunt.
Game of Thrones has also recently released a relatively successful miniatures game Interesting. So GW, seeing money left on the table, is quickly jumping back into it after they've realised their huge, colossal mistake. What were they thinking, though, really? Are we going to get a much more kind of realistic version of the old world, where we essentially have human armies fighting human armies? Are they going to resculpt? I mean, is this going to be a full release? A completely new thing? I think it might be. I think we might actually get, multiple different houses of just normal humans that all look very distinct in their livery and the way that they are dressed. One's going to be, all knights, essentially Bretonians. One's going to be all cloth, etc., etc. And they're just going to fight each other. That would be very interesting. Also, is it going to be rank and flank? Because the way they're kind of, I don't know. As I said, rank and flank originally comes from historical war games. And the idea to me that you're just going to have 4 houses of humans attacking each other, that sounds potentially, for no real reason to me, like it's quite a historical game. So I could totally see rank and flank. Lines of men set up against each other as, they shoot stuff. And I'm not against that, by the way. I'd love a rank and flank game to come out. GW does great miniatures. Let's see if they can do this justice. And it would be a completely new rule set, potentially. So they might actually not screw it up, which is pretty exciting. Because, of course, a lot of the screw-ups that everybody complains about with, for example, Kill Team 40k, are all kind of legacy issues that they just refuse to get rid of. So that's very interesting. However, I did say at the beginning of this video that there were 2 things that this means. So one is that I believe that they are going to do a more historical rank and flank game. Now, it might not actually be rank and flank, obviously. Are they going to do that? I've got more to say on this before I go on to the second point, actually. Okay, so GW recently has started to redo some of the old world model lines. For example, the recent Chaos Marines, Chaos Warriors. Super iconic. They looked decent before, but they were in rank and flank poses. What that means, for anyone that doesn't know, is that you were able to line up all of these guys next to each other in, rows of 5 and columns of 5. And so that actually had the designers quite restricted in the poses that they could design for these models, because you just couldn't have these heroic poses because they would be hitting the model next to them. They had to be quite static, as an army in a formation would be. It would be very rank and file. That's why it's called that. But they have begun to redo those sculpts. Now, ignore the fact that they have changed the bases from square base to circle base. That doesn't matter. But they have made the poses more dynamic, which means that if you were to now put them back onto square bases, unless those square bases were like 40mm square bases, which are huge, and you'd end up needing to have a really big board to contain that game, these models will no longer work for rank and flank. But they've announced this, so they know that they're going to be doing this game. So does that mean that they are not going to be using rank and flank? That's possible. That certainly seems to be the way that GW is going. They are going for more skirmish games, more smaller games. Taking all of that into account, taking into account their historical game, taking into account the new Game of Thrones thing, taking into account that they have re-sculpted models, I believe they will have to do one of 2 things. Either they are going to do all new miniatures, which I think is actually very possible. Well, actually, sorry, I think 100%, whatever this game is, it's going to be all new miniatures. Whether it is rank and flank, and they're just going for each household is its own theme, and they do it that way, you're still going to need all new miniatures. Or whether they decide to do skirmish, you're still going to need all new miniatures, because there's just not enough variety in the current Warhammer Age of Sigmar sculpts to give you what this should be, the old world. So they need new sculpts. But here's another option. Rank and Flank was stopped because it wasn't selling, because it didn't appeal to people, partly also because it was too expensive to get into it. So, how can you do Rank and Flank without being too expensive? Let me tell you. What is something that everybody is wanting to happen in 40k? We've seen Adeptus Titanicus. We've seen Aeronautica Imperialis. Logically, what comes next for 40k in that scale? That's right, Epic 40k. We know it's coming. At some point, GW is going to do Epic 40k. Or are they going to do Epic Old World? Ooh. How about that? Interesting, right? Just think about it. So it will give you the Rank and Flank. You can do the whole thing on a smaller board, which is something Games Workshop is trying to do more and more of. Everything can be cheaper, which obviously GW doesn't like. They will still be making absolute mint off this, obviously. They won't go as small as Epic used to be. We know that. They're going to upscale it. But they might drop it down to, 8 mil, 10 mil, 12 mil, something like that. And give us a proper Rank and Flank game set in the old world, which we know they want to do because they want to bring back, hey, did you like Warhammer Total War? Now play it on the tabletop, right? That's exactly what they want to do. They want to get that tie-in. Because right now, if you like Warhammer Total War, good. You're done. You don't need to buy anything from GW. Age of Sigmar does not replicate the lore or the feel of Total War. This way, they could do it. Very interesting. Again, though, I have absolutely no proof of this. Now I move on to my second point. And this is obviously a very personal point, but one thing that Age of Sigmar is missing, in my opinion, is, and I'm going to be honest here, is... don't get me wrong, I get what they're doing. They've gone for the high fantasies, the high fantasy, and they wanted to make everything their own IP, and that's great. But you know what I want to do in my game, and I'm going to be 100% honest, I want to have a vampire and a skeleton horde, and just be like, hey, I'm a vampire with a skeleton horde, and I'm going to fight some armies, and that's cool. And I can't do that. I can't live my fantasy in Age of Sigmar, because it's all weird and shit, isn't it? So I looked into it. I was like, you know what? I'd quite like to do the whole, I'm a vampire lord, with an army of skeletons or whatever. And I think, I looked into it and it doesn't really work. And the sculpts are old and kind of crap. And I was like, guess I won't play Age of Sigmar then.
There's no cure for being a cunt.
So yeah, I realised that final point wasn't exactly the sturdiest point. With the most well sourced documents, sources there, but I want to play a vampire lord, and Age of Sigmar doesn't let me do that particularly well. And they blew up the old world, which did let me do that. And I would like them to bring that back into the old world. Thank you. Okay, that might have been a bit of a crazy idea, I realise, but I am genuinely curious. What do you think? Do you think I'm completely off the mark with that? I mean, I could be, obviously. They might just be doing what everybody expects and making the old world come back, and there's going to be some households, and you can fight each other in a skirmish game that is essentially 40k, but with pikes instead of chainswords, I guess. That could be what they're doing, but what do you think of my idea? Genuinely curious. Also, serious question. Would you like my idea to happen? Or does that not really speak to you? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you're here for this isn't going to make much sense. This isn't what I normally talk about. But if you're into Kill Team, I've got a Discord, I've got a Patreon, I also sell merch. But now, on to the video, because I have definitely put this end bit at the beginning, haven't I? Anyway, this has been me, Glass Half Dead. Love to know your thoughts, and I hope you've had a good day and continue to have a good day. Goodbye.